Now to a story you'll see for the first time and only on NBC4. As we await the Menendez brothers' parole hearing this summer, today we're hearing from the attorney of another high-profile convicted murderer who was eventually released on parole. Leslie Van Houten, one of Charles Manson's followers, was set free in 2023, but two governors blocked her release 5 times. NBC4's Alex Rozier spoke with her attorney, who shared her thoughts on Van Houten's life now and the Menendez case. Alex.
Carolyn, Leslie Van Houten's attorney said Leslie's been doing great, followed every rule since she was released on parole almost 2 years ago. But now the spotlight shifted to another high-profile case involving the Menendez brothers. Later this year, the world may learn if convicted killers Eric and Lionel Menendez will be released on parole. And few people know the parole process like Nancy Tatro.
It was just a battle.
Nancy's the attorney for convicted murderer Leslie Van Houten. Van Houten, one of Charles Manson's famous followers, served more than 50 years in prison for the killings of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca.
She committed just a terrible crime.
After decades of therapy and rehab programs, she appeared before the parole board 25 times. 20 times she was denied. In the final 5 hearings, the board granted her parole, but California Governor Gavin Newsom and former Governor Jerry Brown vetoed the board's decision. But in 2023, an appeals court overruled Newsom and ordered her release.
2 of the 3 justices agreed that there was nothing more she could do, that every measure found her to be no longer a risk of danger to the public.
Now a different case is back in the headlines as Eric and Lionel Menendez push for parole too.
The parole board will decide if they are a current risk of danger to public safety.
After the brothers were sentenced to life in prison for the 1989 murder of their parents, a judge resentenced them in May, making them immediately eligible for parole. But Nancy said just because a judge gave them a chance of parole doesn't mean they will be granted parole.
Now they have to appear in front of the parole board. The parole board has a very different question to answer, and that is, are they currently dangerous? Are they safe to let out of prison?
Nancy says the brothers' rules violations in prison may hurt their chances, and so will the risk assessment that said they pose a moderate risk of committing violence if released.
Leslie, on the other hand, had 30 of those risk assessments over the years, all of which were low.
Even with a low risk assessment, Leslie had to appear before the parole board 25 times. Nancy says the Menendez brothers will likely have a hard time too.
Do you think the parole board will grant their release?
I think it's going to be challenging for them. I think they will have an easier path to parole, certainly than Leslie, because Charles Manson was just such a stigma. But I do think that they have some work ahead of them.
Now, if the parole board denies the Menendez brothers parole, their next hearing, statute says, may be anywhere from 3 years to 15 years down the road, but they can be granted another hearing sooner if the board deems that they have good cause. But even if the brothers are granted parole, Nancy said it may be tough getting the governor to sign off on it. Remember, he ultimately can overturn the parole board's decision. We're live in Larchmont. I'm Alex Rozier, NBC4 News.